Welcome back to Overtime here. We'll talk more college football, some big games going on last week, some more big games on the slate for this week. And we'll talk about some of those games coming up in just a little bit. But Mark, let's go bigger picture here. The Associated Press put out their poll last week about the number one team in the nation, obviously, is Alabama. Georgia still got four first-place votes in that poll. You have Oklahoma, teams like Texas A&M, then teams that other people expect to be pretty good this year. A team like Georgia, a team like Clemson. Let me ask you this. Team that is number 2 in the nation or the best team not named Alabama, in your opinion, is who?
Well, let's see. I think if we're going to take a widespread view of it, and not just stay in the SEC, I would probably say Ohio State because they are perennially a very good team, and they gave you no reason to think any otherwise after they played Minnesota, who is a tough veteran team, and kind of gave them fits most of that game. And some say, that was bad calls at the end of that game. Might have cost Minnesota a win. But still, Ohio State isn't blowing people out like Alabama is. But they're good enough to be pretty much undefeated or have one loss every year. They get into the playoff every year. And their talent-wise, they're right up there with anybody in the country. So I would probably say them. I'm not so impressed coming off of that game against Clemson to say Georgia, even though I would put them like a 1 and 1A with them and Ohio State because I believe Georgia can be the best team in college football this year. I believe they could beat Alabama if everything fell in the right area for them, which usually doesn't. When you look at the history between the two, where they've had them basically with their foot on their throat so many times and weren't able to finish the job. So can they do that now? I don't know. And judging from what their offense showed against Clemson, you have to be able to score to beat Alabama. If they're not scoring, they won't beat them.
Oklahoma is a team that struggled a little bit. Texas A&M struggled just a little bit against Kent State. Of the teams that are maybe on that outside looking in, what are some of the things that I think, in your opinion, do you think that some of these top teams need to do in order, as you said, to beat Alabama?
Well, I mean, if you have Texas A&M, you've never beaten them. So, I mean, what do you know about beating Alabama? I think going into the year, you've heard some of the words between Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban. So I think that you want to continue that kind of rivalry and maybe that heated words between the two. I think that they have the talent, but again, their biggest question is, can they get enough offensively to keep up with Alabama? And that's the question for everybody. So that's what I would worry about them. They didn't show me much against Kent State. So when you're looking at an Ole Miss, I thought they looked a lot better than anybody else in the West. I thought LSU looked awful in losing to UCLA. You cannot lose to UCLA. I don't care where the game is. And their defense showed that they're no better than they were last year. And until they get that ready, they're not going to really be anything in a while. I thought they were going to be a lot better this year. Judging from that first game, there's a lot to be desired on the defensive side of the ball. I think Auburn can be a team that can jump up. Where they fit, I don't know yet. You got to wait till they play at Texas A&M or at LSU to see where they fit.
They'll get that shot against Penn State coming up in just a little bit. I agree with you there. Let's go to some picks here for this weekend's college football games. Once again, like we did last week, we'll go both against the spread and straight up. You see the numbers there and you see the lines. That big game in the horseshoe. You got Ohio State hosting Oregon. Ohio State's a 14.5-point favorite. It's a big number to clear. What are some of the things that you believe that both in this game that Ohio State needs to do, and who do you like in the matchup?
They're 9-0 all time against Oregon. So right there, I think mentally Oregon probably is defeated before they even get to the game. But and again, the Pac-12 needs to show that they belong in the conversation. Now, I'll give them UCLA. They did kind of show that. I mean, they smacked LSU right around. So maybe they're better than as a conference than they've been the last couple of years. They're not the definite third best or fourth best, with the Big 12, or knowing that the Big 10 and SEC are the first two. That win for UCLA kind of gave them a little bit of attention. they would get a lot of attention if they beat
yeah,
Ohio State
exactly.
On Saturday. I don't expect that to happen. I like Oregon. I think they're good. Their best defensive player got hurt. They don't know. They don't know what his status is going to be. So without him, even though they're like a video game offensively, and I believe they could probably keep up with Ohio State, they're on the road. They're
Right.
not. They're not at home in that video game of stadium that they have.
Exactly. So you like Ohio State in both
Absolutely.
categories, I'm guessing there. What about the big one in Ames? That's where College Game Day will be, Iowa
right.
State and Iowa.
I like Iowa to pull the upset. Again, a Big Ten team against Big 12. Iowa, I think, it can be very good.
I like Iowa too, and Iowa's a team that I think is not. It's not necessarily. They're not intimidated by playing in Iowa State. Even though the Cyclones are a lot better, I think that the Hawkeyes can get them number one at home, and obviously. Obviously they'd be covering that 4.5 points.
But also last week you saw in a game where they were pretty much thought to be even against Indiana, and they smacked them around.
Right.
So I think Iowa's ready to play this year. They've been waiting for this. Iowa's never really been among, for a long time, among the best in the Big Ten. So this is kind of a good chance for them.
Another chance for Tennessee to really make a statement against Pittsburgh. They're a 3.5 point dog.
Really?
Dog
a
at home.
statement against Pittsburgh?
For them.
For them, I guess, maybe, yeah.
It is Tennessee. I'm trying to grade on the curve here. Who do you like in the matchup?
I think Tennessee. You got to beat an ACC team if you want to be anything to be taken seriously. In the East, we don't know who that third team's going to be.
Right.
We know it's probably not going to be South Carolina. It probably could be Kentucky, Missouri. I think Tennessee is in that mix. We'll see if they can't beat Pittsburgh at home, though, then I don't like their chances to do anything this year.
According to Vegas, Pittsburgh's the favorite in that matchup. Meanwhile, Texas A&M going to Denver to take on Colorado.
Well, Texas A&M, this is a game they should win, and I don't know about 17 points. That's a lot, and for a team that isn't as sound offensively as you'd like them to be, you still have some question marks. I would take Colorado with that amount of points. Did we find out who won last week? Did we?
I'll be great at this, and we'll keep you abreast on your scores there. Texas against Arkansas, kind of an ode to kind of old school football between these two football teams, Longhorns and Razorbacks. Who you like?
The old Southwest Conference matchup. I think I was wrong about Texas last week. Arkansas, I expect to be better. This is a big game for them. If they can make some noise against Texas, 6.5 points, though, I don't think is enough. I think Texas will cover that.
Right.
Even though I imagine Arkansas is going to play pretty tough, and they'll be in that game for most of the second half. I just think Texas's offense is a little bit better to where they can average a touchdown win.
It'd be a huge statement if the Razorbacks can win, but I agree. I like Sark, and I think that he's moving that program in the right direction. NC State, who looked really good last week, at Mississippi State, who did not look great last week. Who you like in that matchup?
As much as I hate to say it, if you're an ACC team like NC State, who I think will be better this year, just like when you had North Carolina losing, usually you have your perennial top dog that could be a challenge against Clemson losing in that first week.
Right.
We saw that with North Carolina. Maybe North Carolina State can be that team this year. Mississippi State really disappointed me. I expect them to be better. If they don't come out and play a lot better at home against NC State, I don't know what kind of year they're going to have. You would figure they're in the class of at least Arkansas and maybe Auburn, trying to get to that second tier. I don't know. They didn't play like that last week.
Exactly. So you like NC State in that matchup, you said?
Absolutely.
Kentucky and Missouri's first SEC game of the calendar. Kentucky a 5-point favorite on the road.
I like Kentucky in this game because I think Kentucky's going to be that third team in the East, and I like them even with giving up 5 points at Missouri.
I'm the same way. I like Drinkwitz. I think he'll do a lot of good things at Missouri, but I think what Stoops has really built, especially on defense, but then also brought in some NFL guys on the offensive side. I think that like you said, I think they'll take that next step there in the East and obviously start to challenge and maybe play some really competitive games against the top tier versions of that division. That's good stuff. Well, coming up next here on Overtime, we'll talk a little NFL with the seasoning opening tomorrow. We'll have that coming up next.